Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible teaching snippet of the day. Well, today I want to hop in and I want to do part 2 of Paul's thorn in the flesh. I want to start this teaching snippet the same way as what I said yesterday, though. It is so important that we understand this. Our opinion and what we believe about God will always determine what we receive from God. If we've got stinking thinking, it's going to stop the power of God in our lives. It's not because God's holding back, but it's because we are double-minded and we cannot see God in His goodness and receive all the good things. You know, He put all of our sicknesses and diseases on Jesus. But if He's putting sicknesses and diseases on us, then God, He's double-minded, and He's not even a just God anymore because He's making everybody sick. He's punishing Jesus, and He's punishing us. I'm sorry, but that just really don't add up and make sense, that God would do all of this to His precious, precious Son, Jesus, and then He would still be mad and angry and make us sick as well. Here's another thought for you. Could you actually call someone who would put cancer on their little child to teach them to put their toys in their toy box? Could you call that person good? I don't think you could. And so how can we say that God is a good God, and the Bible says He is, by the way, so He is. How can we say that God's a good God if He's making people sick? And here's another thought. If God uses sickness to teach us and to discipline us and to make us better Christians, why is He making unbelievers sick? Or is He making unbelievers sick? And here's another question. If they're unbelievers and they're living reprobate lives, I see so many of them walking in health and not sick. Why aren't they sick? See, you got all these looming questions when you start trying to assign God being the giver of sickness. You just can't connect it. But I can connect it. Watch this. There's a Bible verse for you. Through Adam, one man, sin and death came. Okay, through Adam, sickness came into the world. Not through God, through Adam. Okay? Through one man, Jesus Christ, God put all of the sickness and disease on Him so He could carry them away and get them out of our lives. Okay? So let's get started on this Paul's thorn in the flesh. I want to talk to you a little bit more. You know, yesterday I used Acts chapter 16 where I showed where Paul and Luke met. That was in chapter 10. I need to do a side stop real quick. Did you know Luke was a doctor? And nowhere in any of Paul's letters, even Luke in Acts, he's the one that wrote Acts, he doesn't even mention, okay, that Paul was sick. Paul doesn't mention, well, Luke is my doctor and he travels with me because I got this gooey eye disease I can't get over. I'm just wondering why neither one of them would have ever mentioned it. Nowhere outside the Bible do we find anything where Paul is sick. Anyway, I talked about that yesterday. Before, I want to tell you this too. Did you know the book of Acts is 28 chapters? Did you know each chapter, and it's not year by year, but the book of Acts covers a 28 to 30 year period. So it's not like a 4 or 5 year period. So if we'll look at the book of Acts, that actually covers a long, long period of time, and it was originally called the Actions of the Apostles. So basically it's tracking all of the things that the apostles did right after Pentecost in chapter 1 of Acts. So let's get into this. Today what I want to do is I want to talk about 2 or 3 specific words in this verse, and I'm over in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 and 8, all the way through maybe 10, okay? And so here it is. I want to read this. It says, there was given me a thorn in the flesh. And that word given me, did you know I've actually heard it taught that God put the sickness on Paul because of that word given? And they just read it and keep right on going and teach their stinking thinking what they believe, the Bible, and they don't study. They just repeat what they've been told, and we run with, well, God put this on Paul. That word given in the Greek means to cause to come forth, to hinder. Okay? So let me see if I can put it in context here. There was given to me a thorn in the flesh, okay? There was cause to come forth to hinder me, a thorn in the flesh, okay? What Paul is saying here is that Satan, which by the way, the word Satan, he was given that name Satan, but in the original Greek, that word is adversary. Adversary. Anytime you see the word Satan, the original Greek there says adversary, okay? So there was cause to come forth to hinder him, the messenger of the adversary. So the adversary, a messenger, an angel, an evil spirit, would come forth to try to stop Paul from preaching and teaching and spreading the gospel, is what was going on here. I brought that out in Acts chapter 16, 17, where the girl followed him around for several days before Paul cast out the unclean spirit out of her to make her go away and stop hindering them from preaching the gospel. So the next thing I want to talk about is the word infirmities. And I'm going to pick up in verse 9, and I'm reading straight out of the King James today. And it says, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities." And I'm going to stop right there because I want to tell you what that word infirmities means. The word infirmities in the Strong's means trials and tribulations, trials and troubles. And watch, it can also mean weakness. So if the word right here, when we're reading, "My grace is sufficient for thee, my strength is made perfect in your infirmities," your weaknesses. "Most gladly, therefore, I will rather glory in my trials and troubles." And then let's go to verse 10. "And therefore I take pleasure in trials and troubles, and reproaches, and necessities, and persecutions, and distresses. For Christ's sake, when I am weak," see, the word infirmity doesn't always mean sickness. It can, absolutely. Jesus took our infirmities, and that means our weaknesses as well as our sicknesses. But here, in this, he's not talking about a sickness. He's talking about trials and troubles. And I want to go back again to chapter 11. And if we look right here, let's just go to verse 24, chapter 11, verse 24. "Of the Jews, 5 times I received 40 stripes, except one." So he got beaten by the Jews 5 times. "3 times I was beaten with rods." That most likely was a Roman beating. So here we have Paul being beaten 8 times. I'd say that's a little bit of an infirmity. And after you get beat with rods and stripes, you're going to feel pretty weak, by the way. And then he talks about he suffered shipwreck, he was stoned. Okay, so he's been beat 5 times. He was beaten by the Jews 5 times, beaten by the Romans 3 times. He was stoned, which, by the way, he died during that stoning, and that's where he had the vision in chapter 12, verses 1 through 6. He had died and left his body and went to heaven, and they prayed him back in. Okay, that's a different teaching. But he was shipwrecked 3 times and was in the deep for a night and a day. So anyway, do you see? None of this, he's not talking about being sick. Now, in verse 27, he does say, "In weariness, and painfulness in watchings, often in hunger and thirst, and fastings, often in cold and nakedness." But he still doesn't say that I'm sick. He's telling us that all he's gone through, he gets really worn out and tired and weak, okay? So that's the teaching that I want to talk about as far as the given being to hinder, and the infirmities meaning trials and troubles and weakness. But before I let you go, I want to use in context this word infirmity in 2 different places because it's listed in different ways. I'm over in Romans chapter 6, 19, and in the King James it says here, "I speak after the manner of men because of the infirmity of your flesh." Let's go over to the Amplified and let me read that. It says, I am speaking in familiar human terms because of your natural limitations. So right here we see the word infirmity meaning natural limitations. The next one that I want to read is over in Hebrews, and this is chapter 7, verse 28, and this is King James, and because I want to put infirmity in, and then I want to use the other meanings of the word. So in the King James it says, for the law makes men high priests who have infirmity. Okay, so men who are set in an office as high priest have weaknesses or infirmities. That doesn't say that all of the high priests that are set in office were sick. It says that they have infirmity. That means weaknesses or weakness or human limitations. Here we go. I want to read it in the Amplified. For the law sets up men in their weakness, frail, sinful, dying human beings as high priests. See how that doesn't mean sickness? So we can't just grab a word, and in the Greek it means so many, it's such a rich language that we can't just take one little word and make it mean that in every single scripture. And that's how we get off into wrong teachings and wrong doctrines. And again, I'm going to tell you, Jesus said, I am truth. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. And I have seen Jesus, and he don't make people sick. He don't tell people they need to keep being sick because God the Father is teaching them something. So I have to settle in my heart that the goodness of God is seen and made clear through Jesus. If the Old Testament and what people thought about God was accurate in the Old Testament, Jesus would have said, what you believe about my Father is accurate. He wouldn't have gone around correcting people and telling them, you say that you know God, but you don't know him. You don't know him, you don't recognize him. Jesus said that everywhere he went. So when we start looking at the good character and nature of God, the only source we have to line it up with is through Jesus. Jesus was the exact reflection, the exact image of God the Father. And if we see Jesus healing everybody, then God the Father is healing everybody, guys. Okay? So listen, I'm going to let you go. I love you, and I'm probably going to talk about this a little. It's not Paul's thorn in the flesh, but I'm going to connect tomorrow's Bible teaching snippet to this. So God bless you, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.